Hi, I'm George Howell from the George Howell Coffee Company, and I'm here to explain a little bit about specialty coffee and what you need to know to make a good cup of coffee. So, to begin with, I have a confession to make, and that is that even though I've been in the business for over 35 years, still when I travel on airlines, hotels, restaurants, I often add cream and sugar to my coffee because otherwise it's simply undrinkable. And the main reason why it is that the coffee is simply unripe. Imagine going to the supermarket and getting a peach, and it's hard as a baseball, and putting your teeth into that, and just imagine the flavor. Most coffee tastes like that. Happily, specialty coffee has been growing by leaps and bounds and is really blossoming in the last 7 years approximately. Now really getting into single farm coffees for the first time in an exciting way. And just like with wine, the greatest coffees are from single farms. And the reason is very simple. That's where you get down to craftspeople who really love what they're doing. Otherwise, you're mixing different coffees from different people, and you're getting this okay or very good, but not great coffee. It's like Bordeaux versus a single farm, if you will. So always look for that. But as specialty has blossomed and really matured, we have a problem. When you, the consumer, go to a store, you are assaulted with a huge variety of choices to make. And so it seems extremely difficult, and indeed it really can be. So that's what I'm going to try to clarify, some key points for you. So when you're looking at a label, you're going to find potentially a lot of things on that label. And the first thing you're going to look for is the country of origin, followed by the region that it's in, just like, again, it would be Napa or Sonoma or somewhere in Washington. And so you have Mamuto, you have then, which is the farm, you have the region, Kirinyaga. Then the next, you would have the grade. And the grade simply refers to the size of the bean, nothing more. So the most common names that you'll see that way is AA for Kenyans and Supremo for Colombians. These are larger beans that tend to be more ripe, if you will, and that are better processed. The next grade, for instance, in Kenya would be ABs, and in Colombia, Excelsos. Sometimes you'll see this grade, sometimes you won't. The next one could be altitude that you have, and that's really an important concept in specialty coffee. If you start at coffee that's really fine quality, starts at about 3,000, 3,500 feet and goes up to about 6, maybe at the tippy top 7,000 feet. As you go from 3,500, you're getting, at those altitudes, earthier coffees, good chocolate flavors, nuts, that sort of thing. And as you go up in altitude, the liveliness of the coffee, which we call acidity, and which is a good term, just like it is in wine, it's the pizzazz that the coffee has. As you go up, the acidity increases. And the other thing that happens is that you start to get more fruit flavors and even floral notes as you go higher in altitude. So it's something to note. There's always exceptions to the rules. Hawaiian Kona is grown at much lower altitudes because it's so far north from the equator, but very fine coffees can be grown there. Still, that is a major exception. So then the next thing that you might see is the variety of the coffee being grown. And again, just like with wine, Pinot Noir, Cabernet Sauvignon, you have the same thing with coffee beans. And this is something that's going to take a long time to familiarize oneself with. A specialty, because it's just being born in a lot of respects, is only now exploring the different varieties. So we're nowhere near as far along that road as the wine industry is, but we are catching up. Each variety does affect the flavor of the coffee. There are some from Ethiopia, a very famous variety called Geisha, very rare and very expensive, gives you a flavor of lemon candy and apricot, and it's clear as a bell. Very different than, say, a Caturra or Bourbon. So these are things to familiarize yourself as you go along. Then finally, what's the roast? It could be a light roast, it could be a dark roast. And if you look here, you can see that. This is a whole scale of roasting. The raw green coffee, once it's out of the cherry, which, by the way, that's about the size and the look of a coffee cherry, and inside are 2 seeds like this. Very little fruit, as you can see. And then in 3 minutes, it starts to look like this. It's dehydrating, basically. 6 minutes, 9 minutes, you get this really still unpalatable coffee. 12 minutes, now you are starting to get a full roast, the lightest of the roasts. And then at about 14, 15 minutes, you're starting to see oils bleed to the surface and the darker roasts, like French roast, for instance. And some of the darker roasters that are very well known, like Starbucks and Peet's. So that's the scale, and you want to know that because each person has a preference regarding roasts. Most roasters in specialty who are focusing on estate coffees really prefer and recommend lighter roasts for those coffees. And the reason is that as you go into the darker spectrum, you are adding more and more caramel flavor from the actual roasting process itself, not anything inherent in the bean. That is common to all coffee beans. And so as this happens, it's like adding more and more sauce to the coffee. So if I'm buying a great bean for a much higher price that's really very special and shows terroir, the place that it was grown, and it really is expressing that. Terroir is like earth, tierra, terra. So if that's what it's expressing, then I wanted to go light with the sauce so that you can actually taste what's inside the coffee bean itself. So really critical that you are aware of what you're getting that way. And then finally, the vintage at the bottom. And that is basically when was the coffee actually harvested. In general, coffee is harvested it's harvested and then it is available over the next 3 to 6 months if you're really aiming at quality. And you will see roasters, specialty roasters, talk about seasonality because that coffee in the raw green form is aging with every day, every week, every month. An extreme example is right here. This coffee is new, and it has that nice green-blue color. This is very, very old, and you can see where it's going. It's headed this way, and with every month that happens, the coffee gets woodier and woodier. This is before it's been roasted. So this is a concept of freshness that has only become recent. We at the George Howell Company are one of the very few roasters, and we're the innovators of that. We're actually taking the green coffee, vacuum sealing it, and freezing it. And that freezing procedure keeps it immune from the seasonality problem. So we do have vintages, and you will see on some bags, and I think in the future with other companies as well, where you might see Mamuto from Kenya 2008. And that might be a much better vintage than 2009 or 2010. And we can actually bring that out. So again, coffee is headed in the long range towards like a more wine-like product. What else could you be offered when you go into specialty stores? And that could be regions. Like instead of seeing a single farm, you might see just Costa Rican or Costa Rican Tarasú. And that's a region, and it will be like seeing Bordeaux or Burgundy or Napa Valley, that sort of thing. The next one, but again, you're not going to get a great coffee. Not that with an estate you're guaranteed a great a great coffee, because it could be a good estate and it could be a lousy one. But at least, you know, it's going to a wider angle, if you will. Blends. Blends always is the concept of taking lesser coffees, normally, typically, although you will have some specialty roasters who will take their great beans and blend them, something I think you kind of lose the purity that way. Imagine taking a Bordeaux and a Napa and putting them in one wine glass, right? So they take lesser coffees that are still very good, but less expensive, and then they will blend them different ways, if you will. Typically, they'll roast each one separately, then blend them together. So this will give you very good coffee with different flavors, but they will not have the spectrum, in my opinion, that the estates would have. But again, very good, easy drinking coffee should be what you're aiming for with a blend, with special flavors, body, and so on, that give it their character that you might really like. And then finally, you get certifications. Organic, fair trade, direct trade, and on and on. Just very briefly, three we'll go over. Fair trade is really something which works only with cooperatives, not with farmers on any level. So it's very restricted in the way it goes. And I have to say, with so much bombarding us all the time in the news and so on that calls out to our conscience, it's easy to want to take our conscience and park it on a shelf. And so you see fair trade and it sounds really fair and honest, and in fact it really is. But often fair trade does not mean high quality. It just simply means that those people working in the farms and whatever are receiving a good price that is definitely allowing them to be sustainable, is putting money as well into their education, sometimes into medical benefits and so on, so you know that money's working well, and that's a good cause. Direct trade really, I think in many ways goes further than that, and it's a more recent phenomenon, and it's in reaction to fair trade. And that is that direct trade, we go directly to the farmers and we know exactly what they're being paid. And we can pay multiples sometimes of what fair trade pays. And there we are incentivizing the farmer to really go out and produce a very high quality product and to keep improving, and we work with that farmer to do so. We visit the farmer, that sort of thing. And again, they can get far higher prices with it. So you can go either way with that. Another one is organic, and where we need to go with organic is towards better flavors. A lot of organic coffee is sold and purchased because it's organic and not because it has great flavor. We are slowly coming out of that, and there are organic coffees that can absolutely be exquisite and at the top end. But just because it has the label organic doesn't mean that it's really great. Same thing with bird-friendly and on and on. These are labels that give you some idea of what's going on, but it's not enough in itself if you really want to get pleasure from what you're drinking. So I hope that's been helpful to giving you some ideas of how to steer your way through this forest of information that's available to you for getting great coffee. Thank you.